Our third speaker, needs no introduction. Olympic gold medalist, 1972, coached the Iowa Hawkeyes to 15 NCAA team championships, unprecedented. One of the greatest coaches of any sport of all time. Please join me in welcoming Coach Dan Gable.
Thank you. Hopefully I'm going to do a little entertaining here, but that's not what it's all about. Really, it's pretty amazing that we have 5 or 6 institutions that are actually competitive against each other, and they're all in this little room here, and they're actually getting along right now because it's something that what you do is you got to look at your sport, you got to look at what you need in your sport, and then there's certain costs and there's certain type of evaluations and outlooks, and sometimes you got to do things for the greater, and that's hard for coaches to do. It's really hard for coaches. In fact, it could be hard for athletic directors just because those W's and those L's are so crucial, but at the same point in time, if you don't band together for the greater, sometimes you're in a difficult situation. And we actually have to thank the NWCA a lot because, believe this or not, as a sport, we've only been organized for approximately 10 to 12 years, where you have just people that are by themselves working on the sport. Whereas it used to be the coaches in those positions while they're trying to get those W's, trying to get those not L's, and so their time is spent mostly on just their athletes alone and not above and beyond the sport. And of course, when you get a lot of W's, you're actually doing the right thing for the sport because you're getting attention, you're promoting it, and if you're doing it the right way, there's a lot of great things that can happen. But for the greater of the sport, it's a duty now. It's a list. You have what you have to do as a coach, but it's right under there for the greater of the sport. And if you don't have it there, no matter how bad or how much you dislike someone or an institution, you're really not doing one of your duties. You're really not. And it's hard for a lot of people that at the high level to understand because they are really knowing how much good they're doing, whether it be Oklahoma's or whether it be the Iowas or Penn State just stepped up a lot. So it's like you really have a hard time. But right here in California, what's amazing is, and if you took this policy I shouldn't say worldwide, but at least United States wide, you would make a difference in people's lives. I mean, if you look at me right now, I wouldn't have probably played pro football. I might have. No, I probably would have. But that's because, that's what makes you good. And that's what makes you good. Basketball, I don't know. Yeah, maybe. But the bottom line is wrestling was my sport. Of all the sports, came the easiest. And it just was for somebody to be able to do it at that level, to influence others, and I mean others by, there's 270,000 high school wrestlers right now. There's 20 million that have wrestled probably in the United States walking around right now. There's 80 million in the world that are walking around that have wrestled, and majority of them probably have followed somebody of that high level and probably know the name somewhat. And that's just the wrestling people. And with that type of influence, if it's positive influence, it's really important for everybody. And to me, in California, with 27,000 high school wrestlers, with only 200
roster spots.
200 plus barely roster spots. Oh man, I don't know if we're really looking out well enough for our own people within our own state. And it's not that there's not a lot of politics involved, a lot of things you got to comply with, and you got to do all these other things. But really, when it comes right down to it, I have 4 daughters. I want to put them out as contributors to society, and when I do that, I feel like then they're going to put out good people. And it's very important for a mentality of a coach or administrator to realize how you can affect society positively. In fact, I don't think he's here right now, but I don't think Zapito came down here, did he? There's a little kid named Chad Zapito that was living out here in California that was supposed to come down here, but I'm still working on that guy. I mean, he graduated back in '93, I believe. And I'm still working on him. Still working on him. He's a story in itself. You got Lenny Zaleski back here. He's doing well. He's Cal Davis. But here's a guy that probably has a little bit of a scar, just from the standpoint he was NCAA runner-up. But how close was he to win? Unbelievably close. And we all have those things, but you got to work through them. And a lot of the times you work through them because of what you learn in a sport. And a lot of times, if you take away something, or if you don't really have it enough for somebody, you don't really give those kids the opportunity they deserve to be at the level that they need to be great contributors for society. So to me, that's a real key thing why we're here today. We're being proactive, to be honest with you, and we're promoting an all-star meet because we have an all-star meet here in about 3 weeks, and that's one of the major agendas here, and it's at Cal Fullerton, and Cal Fullerton is a very important program for us. And because it's a very important program for us, we're taking the time to be proactive a little bit, making sure it's a good event, making sure that California people understand, and the people in the United States understand just how valuable all these programs are. And, we maybe learned a little bit negatively over here at Fresno, only from the standpoint that, didn't see it coming maybe as much. It's just one of those things, and so you don't like to get blindsided, and so you try to stay proactive in a lot of this stuff. But anyway, that's very important for us, and we really feel like there's some things that we can do in the future to even increase our importance unbelievably. And that's what I'm going to key on right now. I'm going to key on maybe sometimes when things aren't quite working as good as they need to be working, some changes need to be made. Now, does that mean you go drastic? But sometimes you may have to enhance what you're doing. And that's why sometimes the coaches have to have another duty. Or that's why we may have to have a different outlook at athletes in our sport sometimes. And that's why John Irving was here today a lot. And John Irving was here for me because I think he represents an educational value that's probably not associated quite as much with our sport just because of the nature of our sport. And not every place, but I think we can't overlook that. So I go back to one of my places in time that was a hero place for me. It's a little town called Cresco, Iowa. Town of 2,000. It's in northeast corner of Iowa. And the reason why is because when I was junior high, grade school, there was a kid they were a great little wrestling town, and they had a guy there that I kind of idolized when he wrestled. And so because of that, it's like when you look at that town, you drive into that town, it's got a sign that says home of 4 Navy admirals, home of Norman Borlaug, a Nobel Peace Prize winner, and 5 NCAA wrestling champions in a town of 2,000. And so, to me, you got those wrestling champions, and then that made that little town. But then you got Norman Borlaug. You probably don't know who he is. Maybe you do. But he just recently passed away. But the reason why I bring him up is because he was so important to the world that they say he saved 1 billion lives. 1 billion lives. Because he invented, worked hard at discovering a way in some of the under economic areas, India, Pakistan, those places that you could take wheat, grow wheat, and make it, show it how it can become food. And he saved over 1 billion lives, and he's continued to do that. It lives on forever. It just does not go away. And he's associated with those wrestlers in that particular town. But then you got a guy like John Irving.